Hello, everyone. I am the Comics Kid 2099, and I am joined by Connor Nielsen. Connor, how are you doing today?
I am doing very well. How are you doing, Comics Kid?
I am doing just great. And today we are talking about a independent movie called The Green Knight, directed. Well, I guess I'll let you cover all that, Connor. The Green Knight. Tell us a little bit about it.
So this is a film written and directed by David Lowery. It stars Dev Patel, Alicia Vikander, Ralph Ineson, Kate Dickie, Sean Harris, and Aaron Kellyman. There are other people in this, but I already listed like five of them. So it's mostly the Dev Patel show. So it follows uh, Gawain, as he is called with a British accent in this movie from time to time. Apparently, this has something to do with Arthurian legend, which is something I am very not familiar with, but I know you are. So I'm very excited to know what you think of this. But the general gist of this movie is that it follows Gawain, and he's a young man, and one day, he's the nephew to the king, and then one day on Christmas, a mysterious tree man who is the Green Knight shows up and offers a game that one of the king's men should land a blow on him, and then in 1 year's time he should go and seek out the Green Knight, and the Green Knight will return that blow to the person, the knight, or the king's man who does the blow, and then they will depart as friends. And then in this time, Dev Patel volunteers himself. He decapitates the Green Knight, and then a year passes, and now he is on his way to go find the Green Knight and, you know, potentially be beheaded. So that is the plot setup, and along the way, it's sort of presented as an episodic adventure where he encounters different people. This is from primarily the studio A24, which has given us films like The Witch, Room, Eighth Grade, The Lighthouse, Hereditary, and Midsummer. A lot of that kind of stuff, and a bunch of other movies that I'm not naming. So I am very curious, Comics Kid, what you thought of The Green Knight.
I hated this movie so much that I wanted to go back in time and prevent myself from watching it. Um, I had a problem with this that I have not seen anyone else address. I watched this with my dad. He actually used his senior discount to buy the tickets, and then he didn't even make me pay him back for the ticket I offered to, and he said, no, that's okay. And if I had had to pay even senior discount price, I would have really, really, really hated this movie. Whereas as of now, having not paid anything to watch this, I only really, really hated this movie. I I was not able to hear most of the conversation in this movie. Anytime like Dev Patel and Alicia Vikander are talking, they're kind of and then there's this loud instrumental music that's drowning out what they're saying. And I don't know if I'm just nearly deaf because I am hard of hearing. Like I'm at that point in my life where I have to ask someone two or three times to repeat themselves so I can hear what they're saying. If they're talking at like a low mumble, and so it could be that I was just having this problem, but my dad also said he couldn't understand a lot of what was going on here. I have not seen anyone else. I just did a quick Google of like Green Knight audio problems, and I didn't see anyone else say anything about that. There were a couple of times where I could understand like the Green Knight, I could understand him, and then occasionally I could understand Dev Patel. Like he'd be talking with Alicia Vikander plays two characters, if I'm not mistaken, and in one of them, she says, and then he says, "Oh, I already have a portrait." And so I'm thinking, oh, okay, she offered to paint him a portrait. And then we see her paint a portrait. And so I'm like, okay, I get what's going on in the scene. But 95% of the dialogue in this movie was indecipherable to me. And I don't know if that was a deliberate choice or if that was just I'm nearly deaf and so I can't go to the movies anymore. Because when I go to see, like, I don't know, like when I went to see Endgame in theaters or Birds of Prey, I wasn't having this problem. So, like, I don't think it's me, but at the same time, I'm not seeing anyone else complain about this, so I really have no idea what's going on here.
Okay. I got to say, I did not have those audio issues. I don't know if that is a problem with the theater you may have gone to. I mean, I did have there were a few instances where I did have trouble understanding what was being said, primarily at the beginning, where there is a sort of narrator who sort of sets the stage at the top, and then there is a talking fox at one point, and I had trouble understanding the talking fox. But I did not have, by and large, I did not have the same audio issues you did.
Okay. On top of that, I was more or less able to follow what was going on here. This is very loosely based on a very old poem called Gawain and the Green Knight, or Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I have read that story a couple of times, and so I knew what the original poem was about, but half of this movie doesn't follow that poem at all, and so I feel like I was pretty much just lost throughout this entire movie. But even when I understood what was going on, I just really, really hated this movie. I don't think there was anything about this that I enjoyed.
Whoa, okay. um, so this will be an interesting discussion because as much as you hated this movie, I loved this movie. Which I gotta be honest, I'm a little surprised to report because this is from director David Lowery, and the films I have seen from him in the past I have really not enjoyed. He made a movie called he basically he did the live action or remake or whatever you want to call it of Disney's Pete's Dragon in 2016, which I thought was cool for about 5 minutes, and then it got extremely boring. And then the following year, he made a film called A Ghost Story, which I thought was a hipster nightmare. I really did not like that movie. And then he made a movie called The Old Man and the Gun, which I chose not to watch because it was made by him. And I was actually going to avoid this movie because I don't like David Lowery movies historically. So when you wanted to talk about this, I thought, oh, great, I have to talk about one of his movies. And it was getting a bunch of great reviews. And here we go. I got to out myself as, a person with bad takes, I guess. But I don't know. I really liked it. I think this will be an interesting discussion because, I don't know, I thought this was the best fantasy movie I have seen in a very, very long time. I was scrolling through Letterboxd, and I don't know, the last time I had given a fantasy film this high of a rating was probably like The Return of the King, which came out in 2003. Now, I haven't seen every fantasy movie. I haven't seen every popular or beloved fantasy movie since then, but I don't know, if you want to count Mad Max Fury Road as like a fantasy movie, then I guess this is probably my favorite fantasy movie since then, so like 2015. Yeah, I wonder where we should go with this, because I did really, really like it, but I'm very sympathetic to your position because, like I've been in the position where David Lowery makes a movie, a lot of people give it praise, and I'm sitting here like I thought that was bad. So, where do you want to go? Maybe talk a little bit about the poem which this is based on, because I was not familiar at all.
Okay. Well, I don't know how clear the movie makes that the king that Gawain is talking to, that is supposed to be King Arthur. I didn't hear them mention King Arthur or any of the Arthurian elements at all. But in the poem, Gawain is a knight of the Round Table. A giant green man comes to King Arthur's headquarters. Sometimes it's Camelot, sometimes it's Logres. He comes there and basically says, "Hey, who wants to play a beheading game? You take a swing at me, and then I'll take an equal swing at you." Gawain does it, and then he beheads the guy, and then he picks up his head and says, "Okay, I'll see you in a year." And then it, just like this movie, it skips forward a year, and then Gawain goes, and like in the poem, it will say like, He had several cool adventures. He fought a lot of monstrous foes. Anyway, let's get on to the really boring stuff. And so then he goes to this lord's castle, and this is like half the poem, this part. This lord says, like, you can stay here, and then I'll take you to the green chapel where the Green Knight lives. And so he says, while you're here, anything I catch, I will give to you, and anything you catch, you will give to me. And so the Lord, on the first night, he catches, I think, a deer, and then a boar, and then a fox. And meanwhile, the Lord's wife is trying to seduce Gawain. And Gawain consistently refuses the seduction of the wife. But finally she says, "I have this green sash, and it will make you invincible." And so he takes the sash, and he does not give it to the lord of the castle. And then he goes to get his licks from the Green Knight, I guess you could say. And then we find out that the lord of the castle is actually the Green Knight in disguise. and he says he's working for Morgan Le Fay, who wanted to make Guinevere have a heart attack. And it's frankly a really silly story. Like even before I saw this, I thought I'm going to be really curious how they do this as a film. Like, are they just going to do a straight adaptation? Are they going to take stuff out, add stuff? Because everything I just said, that's like not a full movie. That's like a 45-minute story, maybe. And this movie does add a whole lot, and then it takes out quite a bit too. Like all that stuff about Gawain's deal, where it's like anything you get, you give to me, and anything I get, I give to you. All of that is trimmed down to about 30 seconds of the movie. And so that was my like. I read a very condensed version of this in high school, and then I read the whole thing in college, and then just recently I read it again about 6 months ago, I would say. And so I will say the story itself. I don't think it's especially good. I think it has some like really weird narrative choices. Like for example, the revelation that hey, Morgan Le Fay was behind it all, and it's like wait a minute, Morgan Le Fay? Like you didn't introduce this character. Like we're just supposed to know who this is. And if you don't know who Morgan Le Fay is, it's like a pretty regular foe of King Arthur. But if you're just picking up the Green Knight sword, you're not going to know who that is. And so like. It does stuff like that I guess a lot of stories back then did maybe. And so I was very curious what this movie was going to do. And I don't necessarily have a problem with changing the source material because as I've already said, there's a lot about the source material that I think was kind of goofy and was ready to be changed. I just think this movie, I think the big thing I don't like about it, there's one big thing near the end. I don't know if I would have enjoyed this more if I understood what everyone was saying, but I have a feeling I wouldn't have. I feel like David Lowery is almost before you said that you liked this, I didn't know that you disliked his other movies, but I was pretty sure you were going to like this just because this feels a lot like a David Lynch thing. Like, what if we got really weird and trippy and nothing made sense and it's just all this nonsense garbage thrown at the screen and I wanted to scream and leave the theater. I have never in my life walked out of a movie because you've already given the movie your money. So at that point, like who's winning if you decide that you're going to leave? But I had gotten there with my dad, so I would have just had to have sat in a parking lot for an hour and a half. But with this movie, I really understood people who want to walk out of the movie. I don't like this like nonsensical like is this a dream? Is it real? I don't like that kind of thing. That I've never seen the movie Jacob's Ladder, but my understanding is that movie kind of does something like that, where it's like, oh, okay, you didn't see that coming, did you? Huh? And I feel like this movie does some of that. So yeah, that's I guess where I stood before this movie. I should say I was looking forward to this. Being a big King Arthur fan, I thought this might actually be good. And I everyone else on the planet loves it, so I don't know what it is I'm missing here.
So I think what I liked about it was I enjoyed how this is sort of presented as a coming of age fable. I am coming from this where I don't know really anything about Arthurian legend. I've heard the name Gawain before, and that's really about it as far as like the characters in this are concerned. So what I appreciated about it is I liked how the fantasy element is present. It doesn't feel like they didn't have the budget for the fantasy element, but the scale is impressive, but it's not overshadowing what I think is a pretty intimate personal journey that's going on. Obviously, like if I had the same issues with audio that you did, I would be wanting to like jam my head through a wall. So like I get that. Like I recently watched the 1931 Dracula film, and the transfer I had, you could not understand what people were saying because there was this sheen of white noise over everything. So like I wanted to like throw my head out the window when I was watching that movie because like I could not understand what people were saying, and like so like I sympathize and I understand. But I did not have that problem. So I don't know, like I really appreciated how much money they put into this, and like I feel like it's one of those things where it is sort of presented in a sort of old-fashioned filmmaking way. I don't really know how else to put it. Like there's a sort of grittier, I don't know, like, but when I say stuff like grit and old fashioned, like it feels like I'm coming across as like some guy like things ain't what they used to be, but it's not what I mean. It's just like I don't know. I recently watched the Black Widow movie, and it felt so like sanitized and like it wants to sort of LARP as like a serious movie, but it can't because it's like putting restrictions on itself that you need like that you need to not have those restrictions and able to I think be successful at what it's trying to do. And I think that this is able to um I don't know, like lyrically, I mean, it does sort of have like this kind of it has a confidence in its cinematic abilities to where it will go for very long takes that you don't know why it's necessarily doing that at first, and then like 20, 30, 40 minutes later that sort of cinematic language will come back, and then it's like, oh, that was why that weird shot was like that at first. So I don't know, like I thought there was some really cool stuff here, and I would like to get into the story of kind of what I was getting out of it, but I don't know, like that's a lot of what I really enjoyed about it.
Okay. What did you like about the story?
So I don't. So first of all, I want to say I think it's very well cast. I think so. We have a bit of a Prometheus reunion here because the king and queen are played by Sean Harris and Kate Dickie, who are scientists in the film Prometheus. And then it's also a reunion for The Witch because when the Green Knight shows up, Kate Dickie and Ralph Ineson played the mom and dad in The Witch. So I thought that was kind of funny. But I think Sean Harris, who I guess plays King Arthur, is kind of perfectly cast. Like there's a warmth and a like grace about him that is really kind of infectious. And when the Green Knight shows up, he has like a strength about him where he's doesn't know who this person is, and so he's like willing to fight. And it's I don't know, like I thought that was like really well cast, him specifically. And I think Dev Patel is a very talented actor who I just don't get a chance to see very often in movies. I think the last time I saw him in anything was this movie called Lion, which I really liked the first half of, and then when it jumps ahead and the main kid becomes Dev Patel, like the movie just gets absurdly boring. But I think he's fine in it. But it was really cool to see Dev Patel get a chance to really act in like a leading role where I liked the movie around him too. But as far as the story goes, we hear King Arthur talk about how like before he's about to he's about to go on his quest. We hear about like there are 5 virtues of being a knight, and I don't know what those virtues are. I know one of them is celibacy, but I know that I wasn't counting, but I think like the adventures he goes on each challenge one of those virtues, and you see him try, and in some cases he succeeds, but in other cases he fails. And by the time we get to the end, I think the movie just sort of has, and my brother articulated this very well after we got out of the theater, but the movie sort of has this like kind of hopeful, optimistic ending where it suggests that just because you fail in trying to, live up to certain values and virtues, it doesn't mean that you can't learn from your mistakes and grow to embody those. So, and I like how like as a coming of age fable, it sort of towards the end of the movie, this is all spoilers giving everything away. The movie does a sort of. Did you ever see that episode of The Twilight Zone called An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge?
No.
Okay.
I've never watched The Twilight Zone.
Oh, okay. Basically, it does that. I mean, that episode is not even really an episode of The Twilight Zone. It's just a short film that they acquired the distribution for and then put Rod Serling at the beginning and end of. But that's one where it's about a guy who's about to be hanged, and then right as like the floor goes beneath his feet, the rope snaps, and he starts swimming away, and he's running, and he's running, and he's running, and he's running, and then he makes it to like this planet. He makes it home, and he sees his wife, and he's about to embrace his wife, and then it cuts back, and his neck snaps, and he's still on the hangman's noose.
So exactly what I would hate. Okay, cool. Glad to know. No, I hate that kind of thing. I will scream and throw something at the screen if you throw a movie like that in front of me. Like that. Now, thank you, because now I know I'm never going to need to watch that, because I hated everything in this movie that is kind of like that at the end. I hated all that. Hated it.
Okay. But what I enjoyed about that part at the end, because at first I was a little disappointed and confused about why the ending of the movie was so weird because I was like, wait a minute, his horse just comes back and he just goes home and everyone celebrates him even though he was a coward. Um, and then it sort of has this I don't know what I was getting from that as that was going on, and it was sort of working a little bit more for me, and and it was kind of working for me was I was thinking it was sort of making a stance about there are formative aspects of you, and when we first meet Gawain, he has this sort of uh, he's like kind of a bit of a drifter. Like he doesn't really have a direction, and he sort of is looking forward to having like, legends told about him. Like he wants a story, and he doesn't have any stories to tell yet. And so now that he has one, it's like now there's a myth about him, and he's like failing to even live up to that myth. And so now that he has an opportunity to live up to that, if he throws that away, like that's like a formative aspect of him where if he doesn't live up to his own myth and his own story, like it'll ruin him. And so I don't know, like there are formative moments in your life that will like grow to define you, and you can like cower out of it, or you can like live up to it. And I don't know, like I thought that was kind of cool personally, but I could understand why someone might not.
Okay. You were saying you thought this would be an interesting discussion. Not to be a contrarian, but I was thinking I don't see how it can be because I have nothing to say about this movie. I wish I could have understood anything that was going on in this movie, so that I could at least defend why I hated it so much. I wish I had something like clever to say, as like we could actually have a discourse. I honestly considered as soon as I watched it, just telling you like I don't think we should do this podcast, but I figured, well, you may have already seen it, and I didn't want to like ruin that for you after you had already seen it. But I I mean I don't know if I can argue with you about like it's a coming of age story. Coming of age stories aren't necessarily interesting to me in themselves. I think you can do a good coming of age story, but I don't think something being a coming of age story is enough to make me give a standing ovation. I thought that, I mean, I guess I can say Dev Patel, he does pretty good when I understand what's going on. I wish I knew about the five virtues of being a knight. I wish I had heard that conversation. I can't say that Sean Harris is very well cast because I couldn't understand anything he said. And I'm not trying to make a joke or anything. Like I couldn't. The whole time he was talking, I think the only words I understood him say was "Cole going up here to the throne," and that was all I understood. And then the rest of it is, and so like I don't know, man. Like I wish I had something to contribute here. Like, but I don't know. Like I think that the story of Gawain and the Green Knight is I don't want to say it's not filmable because I mean they did a movie back in the 80s with Sean Connery and they did this movie, but the story as it exists on the page is not a story. It's a couple of events that happen, and like I potentially could really be made to be interested in like, okay, you get a challenge from this guy, like you swing at me and then I'll swing at you, and you think, well, joke's on him, I'm going to cut his head off, and then I win, and then I don't have to worry about getting kicked, getting killed. And then Gawain does that, and he thinks that he's won, and then the guy picks up his head and says, I'll see you in a year. And so like I could be interested in, now this guy is like having a nervous breakdown because he is going to have to die, but I don't feel like the movie is really dealing with that. There are like episodes here, like he goes and meets Carly Morgenthau from Falcon and Winter Soldier, and she's like, "Hey, my skull is at the bottom of the pond. Can you get it for me?" And he gets it, and then she's a ghost. And I guess that's like, hey, look, we're being clever. We've got imagery here. He cut off a guy's head. He's going to get his own head cut off. And now here's a head at the bottom of the lake. But other than like a very not subtle thematic parallel to all the other beheading in the movie, I don't really think it serves much purpose here. There's also a ghost fox, a spirit fox, that I don't understand what its purpose is in the movie. There's this guy who looks like Ty Sheridan who steals his axe, and then in the very next scene, Gawain has the axe again for some reason. There's like I feel like they realize like, okay, we want to do this King Arthur story, but if you just stuck to the source material, there's not much of a story there. But then all the stuff that they added, I feel like doesn't really serve much of a purpose either.
Okay. I gotta be honest, I don't really know what the significance of the fox is either. There are a few things that I'm a little confused on that I don't quite understand. But because I had a good experience with it, I'm sure that when I revisit, I may grow to understand what some of this stuff means. Um, but as far as like, yeah, when he meets Erin Kellyman, Carly Morgenthal from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. By the way, it was finally cool to see her like well cast. I think she was pretty well cast in this movie. She sort of has like this kind of haunting aspect, like in her eyes and the way she behaves. But if you couldn't understand what she's saying, then I mean, I get that.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know. I don't know why they didn't just cast Alicia Vikander. She's already playing 80% of the women in this movie, so just cast her again.
but
I don't know.
so so like that's one of the things where I'm talking about where it's like I don't know what the five virtues of the knights are. Like I know that like when he's about to go depart on his journey, the king says like may the five like gods guide you and like may you be steadfast in the five virtues of being a knight. And he says like there are five this and five that. But uh, yeah, so when it's coming to like yeah, when the kid who looks like Ty Sheridan, I know him from the movie Dunkirk. I think that's where I saw him before. But he tricks Dev Patel. It's sort of like like a simple sort of fable of like, oh, this guy tricked him, where he's like a kind of like a person who's like a bandit who tricks somebody into lures them into like a trap. And so he steals everything he has, and then when Aaron Kellyman is there, so he gets the axe back because when he retrieves Aaron Kellyman's head from the pond and puts it back into the bed, like she says, "I will like return what has been taken from you," and then he looks over and I guess she like through spiritual or like some magic whatever is able to retrieve the axe. So,
Okay.
so it's like what I kind of took from these things is it's like I don't know. Like, let me look up what the five virtues of being a knight are right now. You guys are all going to hear this in real time. I know this is probably riveting listening to me type. So they are friendship, generosity, chastity, courtesy, and piety. And so when it comes to like, I don't know, when he meets like the kid who looks like Ty Sheridan, like I don't know, like if you're gonna read like friendship into that, like if I'm going to read friendship into that, like he's not very friendly to that person. He's a bit standoffish and he's just trying to get something out of it, and he's sort of punished for that. And when it comes to like encountering Aaron Kellyman, he there's a moment where he asks what he will get in return for her head, and she asks, "Why would you ask that question?" And that sort of like struck me as like oh yeah, if you're a knight, you should be like nice and like courtesy or like courteous or something like where where you shouldn't ask for something in return. You need to do something because it is noble and the right thing to do. And when it comes to like chastity, like he fails that when he like is seduced by Alicia Vikander. So I don't know.
Can you explain to me why she's playing two separate characters in this movie? Because that really confused me.
I don't know. I mean, I guess like it's sort of like symbolizes like attraction, where he's like Alicia Vikander back at home, like she plays a sex worker. She works in a brothel, and I guess he's attracted to her because he regulars her, I suppose. And so when he encounters another woman that he is attracted to, it would like kind of carry her face or something. I don't know. Like it just that's what that struck me as. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I've only seen the movie once. It's been a few days. I don't know.
Okay. I like a lot of this where it's like, well, there's different interpretations of what this could mean. That just makes me want to like scream into a pillow because like there is certainly some worth in like you can have a piece of art and it can mean different things to different people and that's great, but for me I just want a movie to be what it's supposed to be and I want to understand what it is trying to be, and I don't want to have discourse with other people so that I can understand it. Like there have been times where I didn't understand something and then I have a conversation with someone and then I better understand that thing, and that's great, but it would be even greater if I just understood the thing without having to do homework on it. There's so much of this movie where it's like, well, maybe this means something, or maybe it means something else, and I just want to slap the movie in the face and say, no, just be more direct and just mean whatever, and I don't want any of this artsy nonsense. That was where, like, I don't mean any offense by this, but as soon as I saw the movie, I thought Connor is going to love this because this looks like David Lynch's King Arthur, and I would rather die than watch David Lynch's King Arthur. And that, like, everyone else in the world seems to be just, gargling this movie so much. Like, yeah, we love this thing, and it's like, that's great. I'm glad everyone on the planet is loving this, but I would have liked a straightforward narrative that made some kind of sense, and while we're at it, had a sound designer who actually wasn't asleep on the job.
Okay. Very quickly, you haven't seen The Witch, have you?
No,
Okay.
I haven't seen any of the movies. I had never even heard of this company, A24. I thought this was like some really indie like company. I've heard of a lot of those that you mentioned, The Witch and The Lighthouse. I've heard of those. I've never seen them. I have a feeling I wouldn't like them based
Mhm.
on my experiences here. And then I saw there's some movie with that other chick from Prometheus where there's a goat and it's
Yeah.
maybe half human and wow, I can already tell I'm not going to watch that. But hey, if people are liking this, maybe they'll like that. Maybe the goat represents financial security, or maybe it represents the end of our life, or maybe it represents how you cope with your partner having relations with a goat. I don't know. It can mean anything. I'm sounding really salty here because this was one of the worst theater experiences, movie experiences in general in my life. Like I have seen worse movies, but at least when I watch a movie that I would call like a point 0.5 out of 10, at least I can say, well, at least I understood what was going on. Even if it was badly plotted and badly acted and badly written, at least I knew what was going on, even if it didn't come across very well. But I just don't know what's going on here. Like, the basic plot is Gawain cuts off a guy's head, and then a year later, he goes to have the guy return the favor. But it's all the stuff in the middle where it's just, I don't understand anything. Maybe you can explain this to me. So Gawain's mom goes in like a magic trance near the very beginning of the movie, and she starts writing a letter. And then the Green Knight comes in the dinner hall, and he has that letter in his hand. And then he hands it to the king's wife, and then she starts reading it in the Green Knight's voice. So Gawain's mom summoned the Green Knight, air quotes, question mark. I don't know. Is that what happened, or am I reading too much into that, or did I miss something in dialogue?
Um, uh, I don't know.
Okay.
I,
But now
I,
that
I'm,
happened in the movie, right? Like
yeah.
she's writing the letter. Okay.
Well, because
See, like
like
that's.
I don't know because like I remember at one point somebody accuses like his mom of being a witch or something, and it seems like Gawain is a bit of a like the runt of the litter of the royal family. He's just kind of there on a technicality because you know he's the son of the king's sister, I assume.
Hmm.
Um, and so like I don't know, I see that as like okay, I guess she's like a witch or something because somebody says your mom's a witch at one point. So when you see her like partake, like I don't necessarily know all of what's going on with her mom. I don't necessarily care. I get the impression that she is connected in some mystical way to the Green Knight. Um, but I don't know. Like it's one of those like. Sorry, I'm gonna jump back a little bit. I brought up the witch earlier because I was actually very curious to know how you would respond to this movie because I could see the version of this conversation where you liked the movie, but I could also see the version of this conversation where you did not like the movie because, um, like, if you hated this movie with every fiber of your being, then I would recommend if you see a movie that has like the little A24 logo on the bottom, just skip it because they do all have a very similar tone and they kind of produce similar sort of like I mean I don't know I think you might like Eighth Grade but it's a pretty bummer movie so maybe not but it's or I don't know if you like horror movies you might like Hereditary a little bit but I don't know it's one of those things where this felt to me like it was doing for fantasy what The Witch was doing for horror where it is like kind of it's taking a very specific kind of tone and interpretation of like a classic story and sort of I don't know, doing something with it that sort of feels a little detached, but you can, for myself, I could tell that the filmmakers do have a little bit of a personal connection with the main characters and what they're going through. But yeah, as far as like his mom and like I don't know who King Arthur's wife is, but I assume it's Guinevere. Now that you have told me that that's supposed to be King Arthur, but what I gained for like when I was watching it, I was like assuming, okay, either this is an enchanted letter or the queen has some kind of mystical abilities. It's one or the other. To me, it doesn't really make that big of a difference either way. But to me, it symbolized like, oh, this guy, I guess, kind of means business, or if Gawain is going to have like a legend talked about him of terms of like, oh, he will go on to be this, great warrior or whatever. Like if the Green Knight's going to show up and like, have people like talk about how Gawain slayed this great foe, the Green Knight, then you need to like show in some case, like if I'm like a peasant telling the story, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this Green Knight guy showed up and he was so business, he like had the queen faint just by reading his words, like, you know what I mean, like something like that. I don't know, I'm pretty sure this just sounds like I'm making up excuses for the movie, so maybe this is kind of a waste of time, but that's just kind of what I'm getting from it, like implicitly.
Okay.
So.
And that's fine if you don't care about like what is actually happening in a movie. Because for me, like I think I would be. Let's just say hypothetically that I could actually hear what was going on in a movie. I think I would be on board with a movie having like multiple meanings and interpretations as long as like the basic plot was clear to me. Like I can't think of a good example right now of a movie doing that, but like if you have like, okay, well maybe it symbolizes this or maybe it symbolizes that, but like you can also show the same movie to somebody who doesn't care about symbolism and interpretation and theme and stuff like that, and if the movie still makes sense to that person, I would say well done, you've done it. Because for me, like I think it's a pretty big deal that Gawain's mom is doing something, question mark, and then nobody knows what, like maybe someone else out there does know, but like to me, if the movie is more interested in doing this like artsy, like I don't think I've ever seen an air quotes art house movie before, but if this is what it is, then like I'm more than happy staying away from that genre. And like if I don't really know if I could even describe what an art house is, other than like, well, it's just kind of, there's no real structure, there's no real plot, it's just like things can mean whatever. Then like I would just say, okay, like that's not for me. Like I would be okay with it being more of an art house thing if like the movie needs to tell me why this stuff is happening. And if you say, well, that doesn't matter, I would say to me it does. And this may just be a situation where we both are just interested in different things. You and I, we're both fans of Red Letter Media, a YouTube channel. We've talked about them before. And of Red Letter Media, you have Mike, who has said before he likes to have structure and he likes things to kind of make sense. And Jay Bauman, he likes weird, nonsensical horror stuff that doesn't make sense. And watching this, I was thinking Jay would really love this movie and Mike probably would not. And I think not to put ourselves up on a pedestal as far as like film criticism or anything like that. Certainly not for myself, but I would say in terms of this podcast, you are more of a Jay and I'm more of a Mike, where I prefer a movie where things happen and I understand what's happening and the things that are happening make sense to me. And you are probably more, and I'm not trying to like to diss your taste in movies, but you are probably more into movies where there is a little bit of a ethereal quality and maybe it doesn't make sense, but the artsiness is kind of coming through. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I of the Red Letter Media crew, my favorite is Jay, mostly because he and I's like interests do align pretty closely. I think that's a fair assessment. I guess I do want to say though, it's like I do want to push back a little bit against the characterization that I don't need anything to make sense. Mm-hmm. Like I need enough to make sense. You know what I mean? And for me, enough was here.
Okay.
And so it's like there's some ambiguous elements here, but like for me, the core plot and like story that's being told like makes sense to me. Like he meets, like he beheads a guy. The guy says, okay, meet me in a year and I'll have to behead you. and then he goes on a mission to do that, and then along the way he encounters people and sort of reveals stuff about himself, and then at the end he meets the guy, and that's the plot of the movie. So
Okay, that's fair. And I wasn't trying to like demean your taste in movies, because I know like you are, of the two of us, you are definitely the bigger fan of David Lynch. You liked Eraserhead a lot more than I did. I think there was some level of ambiguity with Blue Velvet, and like some like Twin Peaks season 3. I think you liked a lot more than I did, and so. If I will say, if I had known that this movie was going to be kind of doing that kind of thing, I probably would have just skipped it, even being the King Arthur fan that I am. But I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and like I said, I didn't know that you had a history of David Lowery films. I don't think I've seen anything that he's done, but I'm glad that you liked it a lot more than you thought you would.
Yeah, A Ghost Story is a movie that has I'm not kidding, a 5 minute long scene of Rooney Mara eating a pie. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of over this. Yeah, because that's, I don't know, that movie was very frustrating to me because it's trying to be a little bit like, whoa, life, man. It's we all live and we all die, and what happens to our souls when we die? Do we occupy this earth, and does time and life change? Like all that stuff. I just like the characters have like no characterization, and like Casey Affleck is wearing a literal sheet over himself when he's a ghost in that movie, and he's just like watching things happen that after he dies. And one of the things he watches is his girl, played by Rooney Mara, a woman with a stone, which is not allowed to emote, is just eating a pie in a one long unbroken take for like 5 minutes. She's eating a pie, and I was like, this is too much for me. Like I can't really do this. And it's also a movie where the movie literally pauses itself to explain itself to you. Like you're not smart enough to pick up on its themes or something, and that really irritated me about that movie. So I don't know. I saw this as an improvement myself.
Yeah. I had only heard of A Ghost Story. That's another one where just hearing like a 3 second synopsis of it, I thought that's not for me. No thanks. So I didn't have a whole lot else to say. I am sorry if I came across really harsh here. I wanted to like this movie, but walking out of this, we just a couple of weeks ago we talked about Loki, and that was a TV show that I was really looking forward to, and then I was very disappointed with, and I was looking forward to this movie, and I was very disappointed with it. I'm honestly so disparaged with like entertainment in general right now that like I think I just need to stop looking forward to things. Like I think I just need to stop caring, because when I try to get my hopes up, then movies or TV shows are just gonna kick me in the groin and laugh at me. And so like I'm really glad everyone else is liking this. If anything, who knows? Maybe this will tell Hollywood, hey, let's do another King Arthur thing. But I'm afraid that they're gonna take the lesson from this. Let's do a weird artsy, maybe this makes sense, maybe this doesn't make sense take on some other King Arthur character, and that's the lesson I don't want to Hollywood to learn. But I like King Arthur stuff, but like you said, you probably didn't even know this was a King Arthur thing, did you? You said you didn't know that Sean Harris played King Arthur.
Well, I mean, I didn't even see a trailer for this thing. I didn't know what the plot was. I've never read Gawain and the Green Knight. All I knew is that like at one film festival this premiered, and people were like, "Oh, the Green Knight looks cool," and I'm like, "I don't know what that is." And I saw like a promotional still of like Dev Patel wearing a crown, and I saw that it was directed by David Lowery, and I went, "Oh no, it's another movie that people are gonna freak out about that I'm not gonna like." So like when I went and saw it, I was like kind of pensive because I didn't even know what the plot was. So. Yeah, I don't know hardly anything about Arthurian legends, so I'm sorry you didn't
Hey,
like it,
that's
man.
okay. Now I'll save a little bit of money. I'll just never watch another movie again. So
Well, I mean, I gotta say, like, I'm in a similar camp. Like, I've been burnt, like, for like a few times now on like stuff that like I was like actually looking
mhm.
forward to. So
Yeah, I and I think I probably could have done a better job of like preparing myself for this. Like I said, I've never seen anything by A24. I thought that this was like a much smaller organization. I didn't realize that they did like The Witch and The Lighthouse. I think those were like very well received, like very you know, a lot of people like those movies, and so like this is a
Hmm.
studio I have heard of before now that I know that. I've never seen any of those movies either, so I probably still would have been like, well, maybe I'll like this. But I think this is just a situation where I'm not saying that the movie is bad. I don't want to say that because clearly everyone else who has seen it is giving this like rave reviews. But I think what I'm saying is the direction and the atmosphere and the tone, everything about this is something that does not appeal to me. Like if you, there is no Venn diagram where like this kind of movie will work for me. Like, I very much, I didn't even especially like the King Arthur Legend of the Sword. I would watch that movie 100 times before watching this again. Like the whole like artsy, let's let this be a vague interpretation kind of thing. That's just not something that appeals to me. But I'm not saying that it's bad because clearly something about this is resonating with everyone else.
Well, and that's like the reason I was interested to know your thoughts, because I know this isn't typically what appeals to you, but I was thinking that because you know much more about Arthurian legend, you might like there would be things that they're not saying that you would already
Hmm.
know, and you could like pick up. You'd be like, I guess, in on the joke, so to speak.
Uh,
So I don't know. I'm sorry I
well,
didn't like it, but I
oh no, I was gonna
sorry. Was
say,
it?
I wish I had been more in on the joke. Like there was things in this movie that went way over my head. Like at the Lord's Castle, there's a woman with a blindfold. I had no idea what the significance of that woman was, and then I looked on the internet, and that's apparently supposed to be Morgan Le Fay, who is Gawain's aunt. And I didn't know that because I don't think they say that in the movie, or if they do, it's in more dialogue that's drowned out by loud music. And then uh, also, there's like that what feels like a 55-minute dream sequence where Gawain is living his life, and for some reason this guy in a beard comes and buys his baby, or maybe he doesn't, because then we see Gawain with the baby later on as it grows up. And my dad thought, well, maybe that guy is Merlin, and I thought, is he? Because they don't introduce him, and so like there's stuff here that none of that is in the poem. And so like I even with
Mhm.
my and I won't say I'm like air quotes knowledgeable. I think it's maybe fair to say I know more than you about this. Not trying to like be like, hey, look.
Oh no, no, that is just an
Yeah.
objective fact. You
Um,
know anything about Arthurian legend,
but
you know this.
I didn't feel like I was like because I think there are people like I saw that Jeremy Johns gave this a very positive review, and I wouldn't have pegged him as being a big King Arthur fan. I think a lot of people who don't know anything about King Arthur, they're going to like this regardless. And for me, my knowledge of King Arthur did not help me with the movie.
Okay. Um, I guess I only have one note left. It sounds like you're kind of ready to wind this down. uh, but I don't know. What I thought was kind of neat is that like, so you have like this like mad Alicia Vikander goes on about like the colors of red and green and what those mean. Like, um, but what I was kind of thinking about is how, it's called the Green Knight, and you could, obviously say, oh yeah, that's the titular Green Knight who gets his head cut off. But it's like, what's his face? Dev Patel wants to be a knight, and he's not really a knight yet. And like green is also like synonymous with young, naive, and experienced and whatnot. And he wears a green sash around his waist for a while. And so I was like, oh, he's also a green knight. And he's like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Becoming more experienced as he goes along. So I don't know. That's what I was kind of picking up on, like with the title and what it was
Yeah,
alluding to.
and
So
and some of that stuff is also in the poem. I'm not going to say that you would enjoy reading the poem because it was written probably like 1500 years ago, and for my taste, generally literature that was written that long ago isn't very good. So I don't, unless you're already into stuff that's really old and like is just very dry, then you probably wouldn't enjoy the poem. But at least thematically, some of that is in the poem.
okay, cool, cool.
So we this will be going up before we will be doing. I'm trying to think of when this is going up. Next week, for anyone listening to this right now as it goes up, we have a podcast on 6 Feet Under, and then we may have in the 6 Feet Under podcast, we may have mentioned that we were going to be watching this, but they're going up at different times, and then Connor and I will be talking about the movie High Flying Bird on the Podcast Boys. And then I guess a little bit of a sneak peek if you're listening to this before you listen to the 6 Feet Under podcast. I guess the Suicide Squad is coming out. Connor, are you planning on watching that?
Yes, I am.
Well, if you want, we can do a video on that. I'm not in a big hurry to watch it. Like I said, I'm kind of trying to temper my expectations on everything. But I liked the last two Guardians of the Galaxy movies, the only two, and so maybe this will be good. My very low bar that I have set is maybe it will be better than the other Suicide Squad movie. So if you're into it, maybe we can do a podcast on that. That is, I think, the next new release. I think that's coming out very soon, and then we've got a Venom movie. I don't know if you're interested in that. I think we were kind of lukewarm on the first Venom movie, but also like I kind of liked it for a very schlocky, high budget B movie.
Look, I'm going to watch the Venom movie. Am I going to like it? Most likely no, but I will watch it. But you have HBO Max in some capacity.
That is correct. Yes.
So you won't necessarily need to spend money to watch the.
That's also correct. Yes. And maybe I'll come out of that and say, that was amazing. I would recommend other people pay money for it. Yes. So those are some things you can look forward to from this duo in the coming months. Sorry for anyone who loved this movie and I was being overly harsh. I kind of thought this was going to be a podcast where, like, we both respect each other, but I was just like, I don't understand anything to like about this, and at the same time, you liked it, and you, like, I think it was just a situation where we both had very different experiences, and there wasn't much overlap.
Yeah, I still love you, buddy, so we're good.
So that's about all. In the meantime, I am the Comics Kid 2099.
And I am Connor
And
Nelson.
We'll see you guys in the future. Have a good one. Okay.
Oh, boom, it is 2:30 exactly. Yeah. So